In studio with me right now is Mary Jo Tate of HowDoYouDoItAll.com. Now, in addition to doing it all, and we're going to talk about that because you've redefined what it all or doing it all is.
Exactly.
But you run your own business from your home while homeschooling your 4 sons, right? And then you travel and you speak and you are a communicator and you do all that. And to top it all off, because this is really going to blow someone's mind right now, you're a single mom.
Right.
Please tell us how you do all of this and tell us how you've kind of found yourself walking this road.
Okay, well that's a tall order there, but the first thing, how do you do it all? That's a setup, because nobody does it all. And one of the most important things we can do is figure out what the it is that we need to do. And you've just mentioned a lot of the different things that I've done. I've been on this path for a long time now, and there are seasons and stages of life. And everything that I say about what I do today with older kids may not necessarily apply to you with all very young children, and that's a very important point. And then just, we can't do it without God's help.
That's right.
You know, if everything that I say today, everything that we talk about is going to be based on the understanding that God is the one who gives us the strength and the grace and the wisdom to deal with all of the challenges that come up for us.
You know, one of the things that the Lord has really enabled you to do is to take your giftings and to take your ability and to turn that into a business and a source of income for your family. You're also a time management coach. You're kind of like a drill sergeant for people, helping people learn how to stay on task. So let's do this. Let's go back to before being a single mom and now on the other side and talk about that journey a little bit and what the Lord's shown you.
Okay. Well, I'll go back to what you said about using my giftings to establish a business, because that has been key in what has enabled me to stay at home as a single mom. So God laid all those parts together back when I was in 4th grade, actually. I say my editing career goes back to my 4th grade piano teacher.
Okay.
Because when I was fresh out of college and my husband at the time was actually a seminary student, there was a secretary for one of the professors who happened to have been my 4th grade piano teacher. And she knew I was good at writing. And I actually cut my teeth as an editor on D-Min dissertations by international students.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, if a Mississippi girl can edit a D-Min dissertation on church growth written by a Korean for whom English is a second or maybe third language, you can tackle almost anything. But it's so interesting how God used that small beginning. I think I got paid something just ridiculous, like $25 per dissertation, which wouldn't even be minimum wage even back then. And then fast forward all those years later, my husband left when the boys were 9, 6, 4.5, and 6 months old. And I had already been doing some editing by that time, and so I knew that I was committed to staying at home with them. We'd already been homeschooling for about 4 years, but I knew I was going to have to support them. So I looked back to that experience. I had been a graduate student. I had worked with a professor on the works of F. Scott Fitzgerald, got to do some cool things with him. So I picked back up. I knew that was where God had gifted me. I knew that even when I had gone to graduate school, I had chosen a path of editing rather than teaching, because I knew it would enable me to stay at home with the children who weren't even born yet.
Wow.
And so all of those pieces fit together for me to then pick up and work at home. And God has been very good to keep me usually steadily supplied with business. And so that's been great.
Well, now, you know, okay, so your youngest at the time that your husband left, this was his choice. This was not your plan.
No, absolutely
This was not what you signed up for, Mary Jo.
No little girl dreams of growing up to be divorced. In fact, I say sometimes that I felt for the first year that I went around with a big scarlet D on my dress, you know, like the scarlet letter. And this was not what I had planned. It was not my choice. It was a choice that he made. And you know, let's not revisit that. But I knew that that did not change my commitment to be at home with my children.
Right.
And I knew that God had provided all along the way, and He still would. And you know, you were starting to ask, what can we do to help single moms? I have been very blessed. I have a wonderful church. In fact, I moved to Tupelo specifically to attend a particular church, and they have been a huge blessing and help to me. I have a lot of friends who are single moms who have not only failed to receive help from their churches, but they have actually been almost persecuted by their churches, blamed for being divorced, single mom, the words they apply to divorced women. Technically, if you're a widow with children, you're a single mom of sorts, but the implication is that you have been flighty, that you have not honored your own vows, and that there's something, and there's, you know, it takes two people for a marriage to dissolve, so that I'm not, you know, suggesting that I was perfectly right in everything that I did, but there is a stigma attached, and some churches don't get around that. But I was blessed with a church that helped. They did everything from help us move from Ripley to Tupelo, helped clean my house and get it ready. I've had, you know, men come over and mow my yard before my kids were old enough to do it. We have been here 10 years. I've never bought a load of firewood because deacons from our church keep us supplied in firewood. Practical things like that.
Yeah, meeting the need.
Right.
Mary Jo, tell me this. From where does your philosophy come? Like you said, even, you know, as a married woman, you decided, or you and your husband decided the way that you were going to raise your boys. And, you know, you were already homeschooling. At the point that you're no longer married, you have a decision to make, to either stay the course or to, you know, to make some changes and say, well, here's what I can do with what I have. But you decided to stay the course. So I'm wondering, you know, where does your philosophy come from? What are some of the, you know, I guess maybe the scriptures or the words or maybe even the way that you were raised that has shaped the way that you mother?
Well, that's a great question because we do have all those influences and we don't always even recognize what goes into the choices we make today. I was very blessed with a mom who stayed at home with us for most of my childhood. I think there were a couple of years where she worked a little bit part-time. But so I first had my mother's example and her commitment to the family. And then as I had children of my own, I always knew I wanted to be home with them almost more instinctively. You know, there are a lot of passages in scriptures about family relationships and so on, and the importance of parents discipling their children. And I think I asked myself, how can I disciple them if I'm not around them? When it came time to shift from being a mom at home of preschoolers to homeschooling, for me, homeschooling was a logical extension of what I was already doing. I didn't see any reason to suddenly start sending my kids away all day just because they had turned 5 or 6 years old. So it all wove together. But I think now, as I'm looking back on the past 10 or 20 years, a lot of it is just adapting to what is going on in our lives at any time, finding what works now. There are some things that might work that wouldn't be good choices, so not strictly pragmatic, but finding what works and what works for your family, because that's another thing. What works well for my family might not work for yours. It might not work for some of our viewers' families. Figuring out what works best for your family. And if you are married, of course, figuring that out in partnership with your husband and agreeing together.
You know, I think the best place to start, though, is to actually start thinking about that. You know, in our culture today, we are just bombarded with images and philosophies of what it means to be a mother and what it means to manage the home. And, you know, and I was just thinking about this, even in preparation for the show, there are a lot of reality TV shows that that people watch and that are out there that are promoted as like, this is the way that you're supposed to manage your home. And so I want to say this, and hopefully you'll agree with me here, just the fact that you're inside your home as a mom does not mean that you're managing your home or taking care of your family. Some people think, well, I'm home, I'm here, as they flip through the channels while the kid is entertained doing something else. But isn't there a difference when we talk about managing the home and just being inside the home? Oh, absolutely. And I can speak to that from experience because it's very easy to fall into the trap of, okay, I'm a mom at home, I've made this commitment, and occasionally, frankly, to feel a little holier than thou because of doing that, because it's still counter to the example of most of the world. And it's easy to feel like, I'm here, I showed up, okay, you know, check. Yeah. But we have to be engaged with our children and interacting with them. And there have been a lot of times, especially since I've been single, which has been about 10 or 11 years now, that I have found myself realizing, yeah, I'm here, but I'm not here. In fact, just a few weeks ago, one of my kids said to me, you know, Mom, when you're here, you're always in your office with the door closed. Ouch. Ouch. So it's not like you arrive and you get it and you figure it out and everything is all kittens and roses the rest of the way. It's always a process of learning and growing and
assessing your heart, your motives, and what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now tell me this, because what are the ages of your kids?
Okay, they are 20, 17, 15, and 11.
And so for you to be saying, okay, your oldest is 20, and for you to be saying that you're still assessing and reassessing, it just shows that this is a living journey.
Absolutely.
This is not something where you get to the
It's a
point
path.
where, yeah, you get to take your hat off and then coast, you know. And so I'll tell you this, I, also in preparation, took this question to Facebook, because that's where we go when we want to get opinions, right?
Right.
Whoever
Crowdsource
wants
it.
to talk, they're talking on Facebook. And so my question was simply this: are you managing your home, or is your home managing you? And so I thought that people would understand the question. I thought, well, maybe it's going to be a little confusing. I need to qualify it. But what I learned is that people really did understand the question. And you read the post, didn't you? And read some of the responses.
Fascinating to see the variety of responses.
Absolutely. They were overwhelming. Just, people and their opinions, and how most of us are trying to do it right. Most of us are trying to do it right.
And most of us are feeling like we're not, judging by the responses you got.
Yes. So what do you say to that, Mary Jo? Because it's just overwhelming. And I think I told you this as we were talking on the phone. One of the last things I think about, as I put head to pillow at night, going to bed, was what my failures of the day were. And if I could start this day again, here's what I wouldn't do. And that's every day. You're going to bed and you're thinking, you know what, I wasn't patient with her, wasn't long suffering. I didn't spend enough time in this area. And a little bit later, we're going to talk about working from home, because that's a whole new monster for me as I'm doing that. But what do you assess as you read some of those posts, and, we're trying to do it right, but we feel like we're failing?
Well, I think the more passionately we're committed to something, the tougher we are on ourselves. It matters a lot, so there's pressure from other people, and especially from ourselves, to get it right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that disconnect comes from. If we didn't care about it so much, we wouldn't have such a high standard.
Oh, that's good.
And it is important to look back and think, I could have done this differently. I shouldn't have been short-tempered or whatever. But please, don't go to bed thinking about your failures.
Look,
we need to assess those things, but I don't think that needs to be what's on our mind as we drift off to sleep. Evaluate your day, see what you need to change, but think too about what you did right. Not to pat yourself on your back, but moms need encouragement. This is a tough job, whether you're married or single, working or at home, whatever it looks like. It's tough, and we have to find a balance between being too tough on ourselves and being too easy on ourselves. We want to be honest in assessing ourselves and seeing what we need to change. But a lot of that has to do with what our priorities are. Are our priorities a spotlessly clean, sparkling house with glints coming off the window panes? You ever been to my house, that's not my priority. I'm telling you. But is it our relationships with our children? Is it just relaxing and hanging out? And maybe that's what gives a mostly false image of stay-at-home moms, because I don't know any stay-at-home moms who just put their feet up and eat bonbons and watch TV.
There's no way. There's no way.
Not possible.
I told my husband, I said, if you're doing it right, you are exhausted, and that exhaustion carries over to the next morning. If you're doing it right, there's there's that moment when you finally crash at the end of the day, and you think, it feels like I've been working at a factory, or it feels like I've been doing hard labor, and I've just been interacting and refereeing fights between my kids, and also, we'll talk about this when we come back from the break, working at home. It's just never ending, is it?
It's not. In terms of being exhausted at the end of the day, I think that's both a good and a bad thing. We pour ourselves out for our families, and we want to do that, and we love our job, but we also do have to take care of ourselves. And that's one of the things I have found with coaching work-at-home moms and ministering to single moms, is that we tend to pour ourselves out so much that there's nothing left. And if you become an empty pitcher, you have nothing left to pour into your family's cups.
Oh, that's good.
And so we have to not put ourselves first, as the world teaches, well, I've got to take care of me first and then I can take care of everybody else. Not in that false sense, but it's very true that we have to take care of our health, get some rest, which may sound like a joke to anybody who has a young child at home, but to do what we can to get that break, to maybe rest while the baby naps instead of washing the dishes while the baby naps.
Right.
Because if we burn out, and moms with young children, I think, are particularly subject to burning out, we're not going to be able to take care of anybody else.
That's right.
And in my course, I talk about, you know, I've test-driven a lot of the mistakes, so I try to share you the hard learning from, you know, experience.
Thank you.
But there have been, I've test-driven lots of mistakes. I've found a lot of things that don't work for me.
Yeah.
But I've had some health problems in the past few years that were mostly stress-related, and I have had to go back and preach to myself what I've taught to others, to take a rest, to take a nap. Now, there's some people you can't admit that you take a nap to. By golly, if Winston Churchill had time to take a nap, I can make time for one too. Now, he didn't have toddlers in the house, but, you know, but the point is to make sure that you don't burn out.
Yeah.
And that you do take care of yourself as well.
Stay close. We'll be back in 2 minutes.